In less than 60 seconds, a single Russian T-90M tank, the crown jewel of Moscow's armored forces valued at over $5 million, was destroyed by a homemade Ukrainian FPV drone worth just a few $1,000s. What seems like a simple battlefield accident is actually a stark demonstration of how small, inexpensive, and agile technology is rewriting the rules of modern mechanized warfare. Russia has reportedly lost over 100 T-90M tanks since the invasion began, and dozens fell to drones alone in 2025. This story is not just about one tank, it's about a shift in how wars are fought, and who controls the future of armored conflict. The Russian counteroffensive along the Donetsk front lines began with T-90M, pro-Riv tanks spearheading the attack supported by BMP3 infantry fighting vehicles and Grad rocket launchers. The operation aimed to punch through Ukrainian defenses and reclaim ground lost earlier in the summer months. Russian commanders saw this as a chance to break the stalemate that had held the front for weeks. At dawn, under a barrage of Grad rockets, the T-90M units rolled forward in tight formation. Smoke from previous shelling and the morning mist mingled as the tank's tracks churned on the muddy terrain. Their main guns scanned for targets while BMP3s followed, ready to deploy troops if required. The plan relied on overwhelming force and speed. The T-90Ms featured reactive armor panels designed to explode outward to deflect incoming threats, and Shora-1 jammers to confuse guided missiles. Crews felt confident in these upgrades as they advanced across open fields, dodging shell craters and using thermal imaging to spot hidden Ukrainian positions. Artillery continued to strike ahead, sending debris into the air and temporarily limiting the defenders' early response. As the lead T-90M reached a ridge, it fired at a concrete barrier, clearing the path for tanks behind it. BMP3s maneuvered to the flanks, using their lighter armor for quicker turns, suppressing trench positions with machine gun fire. Grad launchers in the rear fired volleys to maintain pressure and support the advancing armor. For a brief moment, the breakthrough appeared possible with minimal resistance. Russian tacticians had chosen the sector carefully, taking advantage of terrain that offered partial protection from aerial threats. Yet, despite the tank's reactive armor and advanced targeting systems, the Ukrainian defense was organized. Observation posts on higher ground, scout drones, and spotters maintained constant surveillance, feeding data through secure channels to coordinate an ambush. Ukrainian forces intentionally pulled back to fortified trench lines, creating a buffer that drew Russian armor further into vulnerable zones. Anti-tank teams prepared Stugna P missile launchers from concealed positions. Initial attacks struck the T-90Ms but failed to penetrate the reactive armor. NLW launchers also fired from elevated positions, but protective barriers neutralized the projectiles. The tanks shrugged off these initial strikes, continuing forward while returning fire at empty positions. The Ukrainian defenders focused on patience, holding back until the tanks reached the pre-planned kill zone. Small FPV drones, each loaded with several pounds of explosives and guided by live video feeds, waited inside a dense forest. Operators monitored the battlefield from concealed positions, keeping the machines powered down until the lead T-90M had moved sufficiently far from its support. The forest offered natural cover, blocking radar signals and visual detection. Once the tank reached the trap, the first drone launched. It moved low over the ground, weaving between wreckage and burned-out vehicles, targeting the rear engine compartment of the T-90M. Upon impact, the blast ignited the power compartment, sending flames and thick smoke into the air. Despite the damage, the tank continued moving forward, its crew struggling to compensate for system failures. Ukrainian spotters noted the slowed advance and the confusion spreading to trailing units. The first strike exploited the T-90M's weak rear armor, forcing the tank to expose flanks as it attempted to maintain its path. A second drone followed, targeting the turret side where the autoloader stored ammunition. It detonated against the shell racks, causing internal fires and secondary explosions. In under 30 seconds, the T-90M transformed from an advanced $5 million armored vehicle into a smoldering heap of steel. Flames engulfed the tank, smoke rising across the battlefield. Russian infantry trailing the lead vehicle faced immediate consequences. The destroyed T-90M blocked the column, creating a bottleneck. BMP3 carriers braked abruptly, exposing their sides to fire from hidden Ukrainian positions. Chaos spread through the ranks. Radios crackled with confused commands, and infantry units became vulnerable without armored support. Seizing the moment, Ukrainian troops counterattacked. Infantry squads advanced from trenches, supported by mortar fire. Within minutes, key dugouts were reclaimed. Medics treated minor wounds, while units coordinated flanking maneuvers using hand signals. Flags were planted on recaptured positions, and usable equipment was salvaged from abandoned packs. The psychological effect on Russian forces was severe. Soldiers reported hesitation in boarding T-90Ms in subsequent days, with fear spreading throughout the front. Morale declined, patrols became hesitant, and operational tempo slowed. NATO analysts described the incident as a critical failure for Russian armored doctrine, highlighting how reliance on heavy vehicles alone failed against adaptive and agile tactics. Observers pointed out design flaws in the T-90M's autoloader system. Ammunition is stored in a ring under the turret, creating a high risk of catastrophic internal explosions if hit. In contrast, Western designs like the Leopard 2 and M1 Abrams separate ammunition behind armored compartments and blast doors, allowing crews to survive even after direct hits. Russian reliance on compact storage for efficiency left crews exposed to straightforward vulnerabilities. The battle also underscored the rising role of low-cost FPV drones in modern warfare. Each drone, built from basic components and costing only $2,000 to $3,000, could destroy vehicles worth millions, creating a cost ratio of 1 to 2,000. Ukrainian teams engineered these machines in workshops, honing the tactics to hit weak points precisely and at the most effective moment. This engagement demonstrated a larger shift in military dynamics. Small, intelligent systems are now capable of defeating heavily armored platforms, showing that agility and situational awareness can outweigh brute force. Battlefields are increasingly governed by data, sensors, and drones rather than sheer firepower and numbers. As the Russian advance stalled, Ukrainian forces reinforced the surrounding terrain under cover of night, establishing new observation points and fortifying positions. Russian attempts to regroup failed, as disrupted supply routes and low morale hindered coordination. The destruction of a single T-90M had ripple effects across the operational sector, demonstrating how precise strikes could influence broader conflict dynamic. Analysts highlighted the strategic implications. Traditional massed armored formations are vulnerable without integrated infantry screens and robust air defense coordination. The T-90M's losses prompt a reassessment of mechanized doctrine not only in Russia, but globally. Military observers note the growing necessity of hybrid forces combining armored units with reconnaissance, electronic warfare, and low-cost unmanned systems to maintain battlefield relevance. The incident illustrated a tipping point. Ukrainian forces leveraged intelligence, patience, and minimal resources to neutralize a high-value target and turn the momentum in their favor. It marked a decisive example of how small, cost-effective technology can challenge legacy military assets. This battle represents more than a tactical victory. It is emblematic of a new era of warfare. Commanders now recognize that data and situational awareness can decisively determine outcomes. The cost-to-effectiveness ratio of drones versus tanks demonstrates how modern conflicts are increasingly about brains and information, rather than simply bulk. In conclusion, the destruction of the T-90M was a demonstration of innovation overcoming brute force. A $2,000 drone destroyed a $5 million tank, reshaping the psychological and operational landscape. Russia's traditional armored doctrine faces a fundamental challenge. Quantity alone cannot prevail against adaptive, intelligent, and agile opposition. The lessons extend beyond the Ukrainian front. Nations observing the conflict are reconsidering force composition, investment in unmanned systems, and the integration of real-time intelligence into combat operations. The future of mechanized warfare may no longer prioritize massed armor, but rather a balanced combination of heavy vehicles, smart sensors, unmanned platforms, and well-trained crews capable of responding to unpredictable threats. The age of the tank, as previously understood, is being questioned. Yet this does not signal its outright end. Rather, it indicates the need for new designs, tactics, and operational thinking. In the meantime, small, precise, and inexpensive systems are proving that in modern warfare, speed, intelligence, and adaptability can decisively outweigh size, armor, and cost.